Hi everyone and welcome back to the next video of the Drawing in Remote Trainings lecture. In this video we would like to reflect on the topic of graphical facilitation and take a look at the basics to be able to derive some requirements for tools that we can use in remote teaching and lecturing. So for those of you who already make use of graphical facilitation, this is just a brief summary, and for those of you who are new to the topic, this can serve as a brief introduction and maybe also can help you find some motivation to learn a new competence, which is particularly useful. In general, I think drawing in teachings and trainings is a pretty important aspect as discussed in the previous section. So I think it's really useful to learn about the basics and familiarize yourself with that topic. So if we start with the discussion on graphical facilitation, we have to consider this topic as a visual process which uses large-scale imagery to lead individuals or groups towards a goal. This is at least what Wikipedia tells us about graphical facilitation. This topic has also been discussed in several scientific studies, and it highlights that there is a significant support for group learning if you're able to visualize some content that you would like to share with the audience. So in typical graphical facilitation scenarios, you have one facilitator who participates in the discussion, observes, and captures all the contents and summarizes it on a very big picture. So this is probably not what we are doing in a remote training or teaching session, but this is a good basis to take a look at the techniques that are used and to consider how we can make use of them in our teaching and training sessions. So maybe some of you have already experienced different trainers who create fancy flip charts with markers and color blocks and stuff. And in the first moment, this looks like, wow, it's magic, it's voodoo, I never could do it. But in fact, we are relying for these things on a very simple technique, which is called sketchnoting. And sketchnotes basically make use of a limited set of graphical elements to be able to take notes in a visual manner in a pretty fast way. So the typical scenario is that we are using text, of course. We are using basic shapes and containers, something like a box or a cloud or a speech bubble or something like that. And we complement it with some icons and symbols and maybe small sketches and illustrations. So you don't need to learn everything about drawing or study arts. Most of the time it's sufficient if you build up your own vocabulary with 10, 15, 20 symbols and elements. And on this basis, you are pretty well set up to create fancy stuff and drawings. So let's take a look how we approach graphical facilitation and drawing. And then in the second step, let's consider which requirements we could derive for particular tools. So let me switch to my flip chart in that moment. Yeah. Okay. So in a typical scenario, we're always starting with text, something that we would like to share and explain. So let's say we give a certain statement and then we take a note and we say, this is my statement. Maybe with an exclamation mark to highlight the importance. Doesn't look that impressive yet. We can highlight it, for example, by putting it into a container, which again is very often, it's just a box or a cloud or a speech bubble, whatever. And what we also do in a very common way is that we give it some color, maybe, I don't know, let's choose some yellow. So to give it some illumination, not the best yellow we can imagine, but it will work out. And of course, if there is light, then we also have shadow. So we give some shadow to our box, and it already looks a little bit better. Yeah, and to raise the importance, it's cool if we just don't have a box. Maybe we complement it with some person who finds this statement so important that he puts it on a sign and raises it up in the air. So we already have a person. Maybe this person will also have some color like we had before. So we give him some color as well. Oops, need to pick the color first. And of course, we also have some shadow for the person. Not my best drawing, but doesn't matter. Okay, so we have a person who gives us the statement. And of course, if he wants to make a statement, then probably we also need some audience who is listening. So let's assume we have some audience here sitting in their chairs. It doesn't matter. So of course, you can make this in a much faster way than I'm doing here. But for explanation, I think this is pretty sufficient. Just to highlight the audience. Maybe they're sitting in a chair as well. I don't know. Okay. Let's give them some color. Makes life much more better if you have some color. Something like that. So it's not important to be very accurate here. It just gives the idea, and that's absolutely sufficient. And yeah, to set the stage, maybe we also need some color for a stage. So we can increase maybe the size of the pen a bit. So we are kind of faster. Now the person is already sitting on standing on a stage. And yeah, to give it a frame. This is, by the way, something that we always try to do. We try to give every image that we create, we give it a frame, which closes it basically. Here, probably a certain curtain could be helpful. So let's draw the curtain. Oh, this is a big curtain. I should take a look on what I create before I do it. So here you already see I messed it up a little bit, but the good thing is in the remote scenario here, I can erase everything again. So let's say we have some curtain. It's still a pretty big curtain. Doesn't matter. And to color the curtain a little bit, let's choose some kind of red. We can tilt the angel a bit of our pen. We can change the diameter. So colorizing is much faster that way. Again, it doesn't need to be accurate. It's absolutely sufficient in the way it is. So, and in the end, you see, we created in less than 3 minutes already some, more or less nice picture. It's not the best drawing, but I think you understood the concept. So in this particular picture here, there is not much statement in it, so we probably could use something like that as the introduction picture, I don't know. But the concept is always the same. We have some text, we put it in a box, in a container, we illustrate the situation with 2, 3, 4 elements. We typically use always the same elements, that's our vocabulary. And in the end, we frame it, so we put it in a context to close the picture, which basically finishes it. Yeah, so on this basis, what we have seen now, let's consider for a moment what this means for the selection of tools. So which requirements do we have when we want to find some tools to support us during online teaching and training? So first of all, let's discuss the pens. When you're in an on-site training and you use drawing as an element of your trainings, then probably you bring your own pens. You don't rely on the pens that are provided by a seminar facility or a hotel. So in the same way, we try to get our own collection of pens in such digital tools, which means these tools should give us the possibility to configure our pens, our favorite colors, the size and stuff. And then during drawing, they should be easily accessible for us. This is the basis. Sometimes it can also be useful if you have the possibility to integrate some different shapes or stencils, like a text box or a cloud, which is a nice add-on which could improve or increase the speed of drawing. Then in terms of the paper, I prefer to have a paper with a fixed size where we can fix the size, so this gives me a better orientation in my drawing. And what's kind of important is that the pen size is absolute in respect to the zoom level. Because in some freeware tools I have seen that if you change the zoom level, the pen size stays the same. And so if you zoom in and draw something and zoom out, then you have a different thickness of the line, which is pretty uncool. Yeah, then of course the zoom functionality should be easy accessible. And what I find particularly useful is if a tool gives you the possibility to structure your drawings in some journals or collections. So you can maybe access your templates or your sketches and drafts for a particular type of training, or you can create an individual journal for one training, which makes it more easy to create a kind of a photo protocol in the end. This is something that I find very useful. And the last part is the framework. So I prefer to have some background lines which with a low opacity, so they are not really visible for the audience, but you can see them and they can guide you on structuring your picture again. And one professional tip that I have for you, what I like very much is the capability of working with different layers. So very often we have the situation that we don't draw a picture just as it comes to our mind. Rather, the pictures that we draw are drafted in advance and we use it during the training many times. So what we can do here is we can draft our picture, maybe without colors, and then we can integrate it on a second layer. So we already have a template, which is probably not very visible to the audience, but it gives you again the template that you can follow during drawing. Yeah, so these are my main requirements for working with sketches and drawing in remote trainings. And what we're going to do now in the next videos is we would like to take a closer look on what we can do with onboard tools, which possibilities we have and which limitations we see. And here I consider PowerPoint, OneNote, and MS Whiteboard as our onboard tools, because I guess most of you are using Windows and are working with the Office suite. So I think it's worth to take a look what can we do with these tools. And then we take a closer look on particular drawing tools. And here I just have selected two by random. I use Sketchable and Autodesk Sketchbook Pro, which are basically tools that I work on a regular basis with. And so we want to take a look and see how these tools can support us, and maybe some tricks and hints. And maybe you also want to try these things. And probably you will learn to have fun with drawing if you don't have. And are motivated to learn a new competence. So let's see you in the next video, where we start with the evaluation of what onboard tools can do for you when it comes to remote teaching and training. See you there in the next video.